My name is Emily, and I'm 34 years old. I recently ended my marriage of 8 years, a significant chapter of my life. The grounds for our separation were indeed substantial, and here's the story. It all began when Edward and I met at a music concert. We were enjoying the night, lost in the rhythm and good spirits, and struck up a conversation that led to us exchanging contact information. After dating for 3 years, we felt ready to tie the knot here. Our marriage had its fair share of challenges, but we always found a way to work through them. We even managed to purchase a house together after 3 years. Although due to Edward's poor credit history, the mortgage indeed had to be solely under my name. Edward and I earned roughly the same, but Edward had a penchant for spending, often beyond his means. I spent an entire year monitoring his spending habits to help improve his credit rating. Despite these financial frictions, we maintained a stable relationship. However, my peace was disrupted when I received a notification about a credit card opening in my name, an event I hadn't initiated. Initially dismissing it as a scam, I didn't give it much thought until the warning resurfaced a couple of months later. This time, compelled by a persistent gut feeling that something was amiss, I decided to investigate. To my dismay, I discovered that my credit score had taken a hit. Coming from a family that placed a high value on financial literacy, maintaining a good credit score was something I took very seriously. The discovery of the credit discrepancy was a turning point in reassessing the trust and dynamics of our marriage. Growing up with a solid understanding of economics, thanks to my parents, I've always been adept at navigating various financial systems. This background taught me to manage my credit carefully, so witnessing my credit score suddenly plummet was alarming. I barely used my credit card, and when I did, I made sure to clear the balance within a few days. The decline in my score led me to wonder if I had mistakenly provided my card details on a questionable website or to someone untrustworthy, but nothing came to mind. Then a realization hit me. Lately, Edward had been acquiring quite a few upscale items, yet there hadn't been any increase in his salary, nor had he mentioned any additional incentives. This discrepancy made me suspect that he might be involved in the mishaps with my credit. Despite our mutual decision to maintain financial independence, only discussing our finances when it came to bonuses or overtime to manage shared expenses, Edward's recent purchases seemed out of place, and he hadn't mentioned having extra money. Determined to address the issue tactfully, I decided to inquire subtly about his spending. I commented on his new watch, asking, "That's a nice watch you've got there, Edward. Where did you get it from?" He replied somewhat defensively, "Just an impulse purchase," noticing the luxurious look of the watch. I probed further, "That looks quite expensive. Did you use your credit card for this impulse buy?" Edward's reaction was one of irritation. "Are you trying to monitor and control my spending?" "I thought we agreed not to interfere with each other's finances," he said. I reassured him I'm not trying to control anything. You know I'm cautious about spending money we don't have. I don't want us to face financial difficulties. Edward accused me of overstepping. "You're constantly looking over my finances. The one time I purchase without notifying you, it becomes a big deal," he argued. This exchange highlighted the growing financial distrust between us, hinting at deeper issues in our marriage. I never intended to control how Edward spent his money. My concern was purely about how his spending could impact us negatively. If his purchases hindered our ability to pay off our loans more quickly, then it was a concern. Edward accused me of overstepping simply because I had a background in finance, arguing that it didn't give me the right to manage everything. He claimed that my knowledge was the reason we were living comfortably on average salaries. Yet he wanted to drop the subject, exhausted by what he perceived as my judgmental attitude. Edward's defensiveness only deepened my suspicions that he was the reason my credit score had plummeted. After our conversation, he became distant and cold, hardly speaking to me. Whenever I tried to reconnect and discuss our issues, he shut down, labeling me as mean and controlling. This escalated to the point where he involved his mother, who bombarded me with messages accusing me of financially abusing her son, an entirely baseless claim. I had always been aware of Edward's poor financial habits. When we married, his credit score was abysmal due to impulse spending. Despite my efforts to educate him on responsible financial practices, it seemed he never fully grasped the consequences of his spending. This misunderstanding led him to view me as the antagonist, though all I wanted was to prevent the financial ruin I'd seen tearing apart the marriages of friends and family. Perhaps I was overly cautious, but given Edward's history, I felt my vigilance was justified. As the tension at home grew unbearable, I sought refuge at my best friend's house for a brief respite. I informed Edward, but he showed little reaction. Meanwhile, over 3 weeks after our argument, Edward continued to accumulate more luxurious items, strategically placing them around our home as if to provoke a reaction. This display only reinforced the growing rift between us, making our shared space increasingly stifling. As Edward continued to display his new purchases around the house, it wasn't these provocations that upset me, but the sharp decline in my credit score that truly infuriated me. Needing a break, I decided to visit my best friend, Catherine. It had been a while since we last caught up, and she greeted me with open arms. We went out for lunch, and it was over this meal that I finally opened up about the struggles at home. "So how are things with Edward?" Catherine asked, noticing my unease. "Not great, actually," I admitted. "He's been quite confrontational. He's not being physically aggressive, but he accuses me of financially abusing him." "What do you mean? Can you explain a bit more?" she probed. "Well, Edward's been splurging on luxury items like a new gaming set, fancy watches, and other gadgets. I'm pretty sure it's not the money he's spending." "Is someone lending him money?" Catherine wondered. "I don't know, but what I do know is that my credit score has plummeted because several credit cards have been opened in my name without my consent." "That sounds serious, Emily. Are you suggesting Edward might be behind this?" I hate to think it, but his defensive reaction when I casually asked him about his recent purchases was a red flag. I didn't even bring up the credit cards. "You need to gather some proof," Catherine advised. "I know, but it feels wrong to invade his privacy," I confessed. "At this point, who cares? He didn't consider your privacy or credit when he possibly took those actions," she pointed out pragmatically. "Let's go to your house tomorrow while Edward is at work. We'll look for any evidence, okay?" I agreed, though the thought made me uneasy. Look, Emily, fraud is fraud. As terrible as it may sound, if Edward is betraying your trust like this, you need to protect yourself, Catherine asserted. "You're right. I need to think about my well-being this time," I acknowledged, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. Catherine and I spent the rest of the day binge-watching our favorite shows and making plans for the next day. We both took the day off work. Despite the nerves about what we might discover, I knew this was something I had to do, not just for my peace of mind, but for my financial security. I loved Edward dearly, but I also needed to safeguard my future, I thought, despite my deep affection for him. The following day, Catherine and I rose early, timing our departure to ensure Edward had left for work. Upon arriving, we swiftly entered and made our way to the bedroom. We rummaged through Edward's nightstand and wardrobe, but found nothing incriminating. A part of me felt relieved. I was still holding on to hope that Edward wasn't involved in the misuse of my credit. We then proceeded to his home office. I checked his desk while Catherine explored his computer. Luckily, I was familiar with his passwords, and although he had changed his computer's password recently, I managed to guess it. His search history was wiped clean, and the desk drawers revealed only mundane documents, except for one. The bottom drawer felt unusually hollow, hinting at a possible hidden compartment. After some probing, Catherine and I discovered a false bottom in the drawer, revealing 2 credit cards issued in my name. I quickly took photos as evidence. The discovery ignited a fury within me. I thought, countering Edward's accusations by revealing his duplicity. Determined to confront this betrayal, I planned to figure out the best course of action. Swiftly, Catherine and I carefully returned everything to its original place before leaving. The drive back to her house was quiet, filled with mixed emotions of anger and hurt. Catherine checked on me frequently, offering her support. By the time we reached her place, I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. The sense of betrayal overwhelmed me. Seeking guidance, I decided to FaceTime my parents, who always knew how to handle difficult situations with their wide network of friends and connections. "Hey, sweetie, how are you?" "It's been a while," my mom greeted cheerfully. "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad." "I'm doing okay, I guess," I managed to respond, trying to mask my turmoil. "You guess. What's going on?" My dad inquired, concerned. "What did he do? Do you need us to come down there?" My mom asked, ready to jump into action. "No, I want to handle this myself," I insisted, determined to confront the issue on my terms and teach Edward a lesson about trust and respect in our relationship. As I confided in my parents over the phone, the weight of the situation began to unfold. I just found out that Edward has been opening multiple credit cards in my name and maxed them out. I explained what. "Are you sure it was him?" they asked in shock. "Yeah, I wasn't certain until today." Catherine and I went back to my house after an argument with Edward, and I found the credit cards in his office. I said, the frustration evident in my voice, "That's identity theft, sweetie." "You need to report it," my mom insisted firmly. "It doesn't matter that he's your husband. The law sees this just as seriously." "I know, that's the plan. It all just feels so overwhelming, though," I admitted, feeling the emotional toll of it all. "Don't worry about a thing," my dad reassured me. "We have a friend who's a financial lawyer, and she will take care of everything for you." "That would mean the world to me," I replied, a wave of relief washing over me. "I'll have her contact you immediately. She'll help you fix your credit score right away," he promised. "Thanks a lot, you guys. Also, I need to ask, do you think I should continue being in a relationship with Edward?" I asked hesitantly, already knowing the answer in my heart. "No, honey, I think you should start the process to file for a divorce immediately," my mom responded without hesitation. "That's my girl. Let us know if you need absolutely anything," my dad added, showing unwavering support. "Yes, sweetie, we're just one phone call and one flight away from you," my mom chimed in. Their unconditional support was comforting. I had feared they might judge me and perhaps think less of me for not noticing sooner, but instead they treated my situation with immense care and concern, which made me feel incredibly relieved. True to his promise, my dad arranged for their lawyer friend to contact me. She was incredibly helpful, guiding me through the legal actions necessary to clear my name and hold Edward accountable for his actions. She assured me everything would be sorted out within a week to 12 days. For the first time in a while, I felt a glimmer of hope. After the call, Catherine and I spent some time relaxing, trying to take our minds off everything. During this time, Edward neither called nor texted to check on me. This indifference hurt more than I expected. That night, as I lay in bed, my resolve strengthened. I decided to file for a divorce the next day. The following day, with the help of my parents, I connected with a reputable divorce lawyer. Despite my worries that Edward might contest the divorce, which seemed illogical given his actions, I started the filing process. My heart ached with the realization of the end of what I had once hoped would be a lifelong partnership. Returning home from Catherine felt inevitable. Despite her urging me to stay longer, I needed to confront Edward, not to accuse him, but to understand his perspective once more, even though I already knew the extent of his deceit. When I entered the living room, Edward was lounging on the couch, absorbed in the TV. He looked up, clearly surprised to see me. "Oh, wow, you're back early. Didn't want me around?" I sighed, weary from the events. "I didn't come back to fight, Edward. I just walked in. Can we have a calm conversation for once?" His response was defensive. "How can we not fight? Since you left, I haven't heard a single apology from you. Why should I apologize when you took everything the wrong way? I was just asking how you managed those purchases, which you took as a direct attack." Feeling the frustration build, I replied, "Edward, I've said it countless times. My questions were out of concern for our financial health. If you took that personally, I can't help your insecurities." "Well, fine, according to you. I can do no wrong," he retorted sarcastically. "I just wanted to talk things out properly. That's why I came back." "Can we discuss this without making me out to be the villain?" I asked, hoping for a breakthrough. "How can I not feel vilified when you constantly criticize my spending habits?" Edward argued. "You don't know how many things I've wanted to buy over the years, but didn't because I was too scared." "Edward, let me be clear," I said firmly. "I never stopped you from spending or splurging. My only condition was that major purchases should be infrequent, but smaller ones could happen any time. I was only stricter when we were working on fixing your credit." "That's not true. You've been like this since the beginning," he accused. At that moment, I realized no amount of discussion could undo the misunderstanding and hurt between us. "Okay, well then I'm sorry if I ever made you feel constrained. That was never my intention," I offered, feeling the finality of our situation creeping in. The conversation at home did little to bridge the growing chasm between us. It became clearer that my visit wasn't going to restore any harmony, but instead highlighted the deep-seated issues that had been festering under the surface of our marriage. As difficult as it was, it reaffirmed my decision that moving forward with the divorce was the right choice. The way Edward tried to portray himself as the victim only fueled my frustration. After our conversation, it felt like a fog had lifted from my mind. I had held a faint hope that Edward might admit his wrongdoings, and that we could somehow reconcile, but it became evident that wasn't going to happen. Leaving him in the living room, I retreated to the bedroom and immediately changed all my passwords. Edward needed to remain unaware of my next steps, particularly concerning the legal and financial actions I was about to take. The following days passed with me either working or spending time at Catherine's house, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Then it finally happened. I received mail from my bank. The letter informed me that all my credit cards had been canceled, and since it was my husband who had committed the fraud, the outstanding amount would be charged to his account at the same bank. This news brought me an unexpected sense of relief. Seizing the moment, I decided it was time to file for divorce. There was no better time to act, especially with Edward financially and emotionally vulnerable. That evening, Edward returned home looking visibly unsettled, pacing back and forth in the living room. I suspected the reason for his distress, but wanted to hear him explain it. "What's wrong, Edward? You look so anxious," I asked. "It's nothing. Why do you care anyway?" he snapped, avoiding my gaze. It's something. Just tell me what's going on, I pressed, needing him to verbalize his troubles. Fine, I just got a call from the bank. They told me I owe them $50,000, he confessed, his voice tinged with panic. $50,000? Why on earth would you owe them that much? I probed, although I had a good idea why. I don't know, he muttered, looking down. Don't lie to me, Edward. Is this about all the new stuff you've been buying? But your credit card maxes out at $300,000. Did you take out another credit card? I demanded. Not really, he hesitated, then added, Look, I was angry at you, and with my life in general, so I did something stupid. The admission was both a confession and a capitulation. Edward's recklessness had caught up with him, and now faced with the repercussions, he was finally beginning to grasp the severity of his actions. This was the turning point I had been waiting for, a moment of clarity that confirmed my decision to move forward with the divorce was not only necessary but urgent. When Edward confessed to taking out credit cards in my name, I was clear and firm in my response. I reported you to the bank because what you did is a crime, Edward. It's called identity theft, I explained, seeing his confusion. You're fortunate that I only went this far and that the bank was lenient enough to transfer the debt to your account, I continued. Edward looked incredulous. You know I can't afford to pay that off. I was just starting to stabilize financially. You knew it was wrong to steal, yet you did it anyway. These are the consequences of your actions, I said firmly. You are a horrible person, he accused, his voice filled with desperation. No, Edward. Throughout this, it's been your actions that have forced us to this point. You've pushed me to the point where I want a divorce, I said, handing him the divorce papers. Here, sign these. You're leaving me too. How cruel can you be? What happened to till death do us part? He protested. That vow was nullified the moment you chose to steal from me and manipulate my feelings, I countered. I want you out of the house within a month. After that confrontation, I left the house with my dignity intact, feeling relieved yet somber about the necessary end of our marriage. Edward tried to reach out several times, but I ignored all his calls and messages, choosing to stay with Catherine to avoid any further distress. Thankfully, Edward signed the divorce papers without causing further issues and moved out soon after. I later learned that Edward was couch surfing at friends' places because his damaged credit score prevented him from renting his apartment. Even his relationship with his mother deteriorated when she called to berate me for divorcing her son. At his lowest point, I calmly explained the situation, revealing the depth of Edward's deceit, which she had been unaware of. Understandably, she became furious with him and cut off communication. Now free from Edward's negativity, I feel a profound sense of relief and optimism about my future. Though I occasionally reminisce about the good times we shared, the overshadowing bad memories affirm my decision. I'm now ready to move on to bigger and better things, embracing a future filled with positivity and new beginnings. Cheers to turning a painful ending into a hopeful new chapter.